If you wake up in the morning and you feel inside like you've slept well, but your watch or your ring says you haven't, tracking can run you ragged or be really rewarding. But if you look at the literature, it's all in men.
Welcome to the Vitalist Podcast, where healing meets wonder. This is your space to gain transformative knowledge, deepen your mind-body connection, and awaken your human spirit. If you're ready to connect with your innate potential, embrace life's challenges, and expand what you believe is possible, this is the place. Get ready to slow down, be moved, and live like a true vitalist.
Dr. Jen Huberty is a leading behavioral research scientist with over 20 years of experience in academia and industry, specializing in digital approaches to behavior change and well-being. Formerly the head of science at COM, she is now the founder and fractional chief science officer at Fit Minded Inc., with 4 academic appointments and around 190 peer-reviewed publications. Her research has secured over $10 million in grant funding from organizations like the NIH, CDC, UNICEF, and the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation. Beyond research, Dr. Huberty is passionate about bridging science and entrepreneurship, helping companies integrate research-driven strategies to fuel innovation and impact. You know, when we were coming up with what we wanted to talk to you about, so many of our clients are getting into tracking. And I would love your perspective as a researcher and someone who works with so many different apps. What are your thoughts on tracking and collecting so much data? Do you think we're overusing it? And how is that impacting, especially our mental health?
Well, in terms of because my background is in behavior change, how do you get people, human beings, to do behaviors? And tracking is a tool that is used, and it does show efficacy. If people are tracking, it doesn't matter if it's eating or exercise or whatever it is, that they tend to stick to the behavior a little bit better. So it does have that aspect that's positive. But depending on who you are, your personality type, I don't know, even your self-esteem and your self-worth, tracking can run you ragged or be really rewarding. And I think it's something that you have to navigate for yourself. Or like an Oura ring, right? We wear Oura rings for a number of reasons. It's like, if you wake up in the morning and you feel inside like you've slept well, but your watch or your ring says you haven't.
What do you listen to?
I know, exactly. Well, you should be listening to your inner being. But then we get sidetracked with this outside thing. So again, it's navigating. They can be helpful for beginning behaviors, right? But you have to ask yourself, is this tracking thing obsessive for me, or is it helpful for me?
So is there an app that you use?
I use Insight Timer for meditation, but the rest of it, no. I stopped using anything for sleep. I already know what the behaviors are for good sleep, so I just practice those.
Do you know if there is any research about the psychological impact of waking up to a negative sleep score?
That's a good question. I don't. I have had people say to me, "Oh, it's so discouraging when you think you feel like you slept so good, and then your sleep says you only got 2 hours of this level of sleep and the rest was crummy level of sleep." We forget society and everything. We forget to check in inside. Yeah. We forget to listen to ourselves. We don't trust. We're just so consumed with all these outside sources, right? Trying to fix our problems.
Exactly. And I think that's something that we love about you, is that you have this foot in the research world, which is seeking for answers. But the paradox to that is spirituality and listening to your inner being and the mystery and balancing these two worlds. So how have you learned over your career to balance that? Because I feel like there's such a pull between the two.
There is a pull between the two, and it still comes down to, research shows. Literally, I am a scientist, so when research shows something, it shows something, and I do believe it. But then, there's always the outlier, the extenuating circumstance, this is interesting kind of a thing, And sometimes when you do a deeper dive into the research, you realize how, let's use the word unstable the research is. In other words, like the tool wasn't the best tool, or the inclusion or exclusion criteria was a little bit wonky. And so then it's like, okay, then you're back to checking in with yourself and doing that. So it's a tough thing to do.
So that's something I find interesting though about science, because it's constantly evolving, right? And like we used to think things were true, and then science proves it's not true, and maybe intuitively we knew it wasn't true all along. So at what point do you stop relying on science for these really important health decisions in your life?
I mean, I think there's so many things you have to think about. Number one, I think you have to think about genetics.
Okay.
So what are your genetics? What do you have a predisposition for? You have to pay attention to that. You have no control over that.
Yeah.
And so just because keto diet is what everyone's saying you should do, what is your risk for cardiovascular disease? Or is that the best diet if it's high fat? So genetics is one thing. The second thing I think is important is behavior and what you will and won't do, and going with that. Because if it's something you don't like, it's not fun, it doesn't make you feel good, why are you choosing that as a behavior? Again, because the research says you should. To me, that's not a wise thing, right? And if you're going to stick to something long term to live a life that's well, right, and you have good well-being, then you got to pick something you're going to continue to do and you don't mind doing. It's like my 12-year-old, his coach told him if he gets his conditioning up just a little bit, he's going to be the top player on the soccer team. But he says to me, Mom, what's the best conditioning exercise to do? I want to do that one. And so it's the same kind of a thing. It's like, think about that question.
Yeah.
Well, I could technically go to the science and I could say, well, swimming, running, those are going to work your heart the best, or blah, blah. I'm just, generally speaking. But at the end of the day, he's 12. If he wants to build self-esteem and self-confidence, I want him to pick something he'll continue to do so he can pat himself on the back for achieving what he wants to achieve. So it's like, well, what do you feel like doing? That was my answer. He's like, well, I'll jump rope and run. And he tried that. And the next day he's like, so do I have to jump rope to get in condition? I was like, absolutely not. You could do the rower, you can do the arm bike, you can do the treadmill, you can run outside. And so the next day he did a little bit of rowing and a little bit of running on the treadmill and a little bit of the arm bike, and to make up his 20 minutes. But that's how you should be treating things. It's what behavior will you stick to? So genetics and behavior for me are the biggest things when you're making these health decisions.
So when you're looking at products, because I know we've had this conversation several times, and they're making bold health claims, what are the little things that our listeners can be like, oh, I remember hearing this from Jen, I'm going to look for these 3 things to validate their claims?
That's a really good question. Well, this isn't science, but I would read reviews, and try to find reviews of people that are similar to you. It's just like clothing. When I go to pick out some jeans and I read the reviews, I don't want to read the reviews of a girl that's 5'3" and a size 2, when I'm 5'10". Again, if it's someone similar to you, does it work? And what do they say? If you're looking for a certain way to feel or be, ask, did it make them feel that way? Or look to see if they report that one thing. I mean, I do my homework. I'm not going to lie. If I'm going to go buy something, I probably do look it up and check out the science. It's just who I am.
Have you come across anything recently, especially in the health trends, where you look at it, it's super trendy and popular, everyone's doing, but as a researcher, it's completely BS?
I will say I'm learning more and more about the science of this, but I didn't need to go to the science to figure out that GLP-1 and all these medications for weight loss, it literally changes the way your body responds on the inside to insulin, as an example. And so then when you're off of it and you go to eat food, your body, the way it's going to respond is it's not going to know what to do. And what happens with that? You gain weight back. But there's other things now that are coming out that it does to your body on the inside. So I didn't need science to tell me that, because it's another quick fix. It's like fen-phen in the 80s. There's always something that's going to be quicker than doing on What's happening with me on the inside that I feel this way? It's so funny because mental health, physical health, all these things, we point fingers, we give them labels, substance abuse, mental health, shopping addiction, gambling, it's all the same thing. Eating, it's all the same thing. It comes from whatever's happening on the inside that doesn't feel good. This is the way we face outward. We do something outside of ourselves to try to feel better because we don't know how, or we can't, or we won't.
I feel like a lot of these people, they want to do the right thing. So what do you think is the fundamental misunderstanding with behavior change?
I mean, the fundamental misunderstanding is it's inside.
So do you think it's mostly emotional?
Yeah, you could say maybe it's lack of awareness of emotions, or pushing down emotions, telling stories when you feel emotions versus just feeling the emotion. It's like really good at this is, if I feel an emotion, then I go down the story lane. The very first thing I did when I was a researcher, I was doing women's health research, and I wanted to help women be physically active. And I remember reading and studying, and there were tools. There was a lot of literature on physical self-worth. And if you physically feel better, then you're going to exercise, and then you exercise and you physically feel better. And it's like this thing, right? When you get on the scale, you weigh less, you're more motivated to work out, you lose more weight. Okay. But to me, that didn't make sense because I felt, well, as soon as the physical self-worth part doesn't go in the equation, you're screwed. So if I don't lose weight, or I've gained weight, or whatever, then where's my motivation? If my motivation is coming from physically how I look, physically what's happening. So I started to do some homework on that and realizing that I actually had a sample of women who had gone through an intervention with me, and I had taught them for 12 weeks about different ways to be active, teaching them that you can just pick the way you want to be active, and any of these things would go, and hopefully that they would adhere to physical activity because I was introducing them to a lot of things. And I found out a year later when I interviewed them, the women who were still exercising, only 30% of the population were. But all of those women reported that they continued to do so because the way they felt about their self-worth. And so when I got down to looking at this definition of self-worth or self-concept, physical is a part of it, but there's also emotional, social, and what the term was used was academic. And when I did my research, I switched it to knowledge. So I did an intervention where I looked at all these things. I developed my own tool. It's validated, it's published on all 4 parts of self-worth for women. And my intervention was all about improving the social, emotional, and knowledge, not the physical. And so women would come into the intervention. It was actually called Fit Minded.
Oh, wow.
Which is why I just kept the name, and my business is Fit Minded. That's where I started business in research. And so they went through this program, Fit Minded, and we were seeing changes in body mass index. We were seeing changes in behaviors, walking more, those kinds of things. But the group was a book club, and nothing had to do with the physical of anything. It had to do with taking care of yourself. So we would read books like Nora Ephron's book, I Feel Bad About My Neck. And in that book, she talks about women and their handbags and how they carry like hair dryers and curling irons and all this SHIT that doesn't need to be carried around. And so I used to take that kind of thing and turn it into, okay, imagine you have your handbag. What baggage are you carrying around with you? And how do you feel about yourself emotionally, socially, right? And the knowledge that you have about taking care of yourself and empowering yourself to do those things. And that's when we started to see changes. So this was before I did yoga. This was before I meditated. I was so hell-bent on proving about this emotional, social, and academic self-worth. And then when my daughter passed and I had come to yoga, I was like, oh, this is that emotional piece that I've been saying everybody needs. This is that thing. I'm getting that thing on my mat now. That's the inside part. That's the part that's not the physical.
I feel like your research became so personal.
It always has been driven by my personal life. And I was always critiqued for that. I was told by dean after dean after dean in a university setting, you're doing too many things. You don't have a one line. Look what it did. You know, it's like I was able to diversify myself. I became an expert in many areas, and it's helping me run a business and teaching younger scientists with PhDs how to think in the same way.
Speaking on the women's aspect in research, should women be following the same like biohacking trends given that the research is on men's health? So how should we approach health differently as women?
The best example I have is intermittent fasting. I did that for a while. But if you look at the literature, it's all in men. The changes that you see to your body, the physiology, the positive changes, the weight changes, all those things are in men. Same with HIIT training. All that's in men. And there's so much literature now to show that women should not be doing that after a certain age because it just increases cortisol and helps you gain weight and contributes to menopausal symptoms as you age. We can hope that there's continued funds for women's health research. Like, I encourage all women to try to figure out their own thing for themselves. Try stuff. And if it doesn't work, try something else and make sure you like it. Because if it works, you got to stick to it.
I think women's cycle is something that impacts how we eat, how we should move, that sort of thing. Do you have any great resources that you could direct women to?
If you want something to track your cycle and get education, something like the Flow app might work. But I don't know if they're that focused in menopause or the aging population. I think more and more there will be. But to be honest, in my own journey, I tried a number of supplements. I tried hormones, and I'll be completely honest. The first time I tried them, 3 weeks, that's it. I was like, I'm not doing this. And the reason is because every time I took the pill or whatever I was doing, I didn't feel good on the inside. I was like meaning my stomach, meaning my intuition, my insides. Every time I put it in, I was like, what is this doing to my body? And am I going to gain weight? And is this going to do this? And is this going to do that? Is it going to fix it? No, it's not going to fix it. Yes, it's going to fix it. It's driving myself crazy. So if you think about it, if you put anything in your mouth and you have negative feelings about it, there's no way something positive is going to happen. So I gave up after 21 days. Tried it again, maybe a year or two later, because my sleeping was impacted and I was so sick of being up. And once again, every time I took it, my head would not stop. So I was like, this is not for me. This is not for me. And so I have decided that I'm going to sit back and I'm going to trust my body. My body made 3 babies. My body has carried me to now. So I think I owe my body the trust that it's going to take care of itself for menopause. And as soon as I got behind that, 110%, I've had no issues.
As a researcher, I feel like you're constantly thinking of new research questions. Is there a burning question if you could solve in women's health tomorrow and create a tool for it? What would that be for you?
Oh, geez. I don't even know. It's so funny because I talk to so many digital health companies. I've been in business 2.5 years for myself. I've probably talked to 250 plus companies. And so many people are like, you must know exactly what you could build that would work because you've talked to all these people who have either made it or not made it. And it's like, yeah, that's true, but I really don't, because there's so many things that work and so many things that don't work. So it's like, how do you get that magic soup recipe, you know?
Spending so much time in meditation research, what's the most shocking research finding you've ever come across?
Well, so I don't know if it's an interesting finding maybe, but what I think society and industry, and when you're selling meditation, everybody's concerned with the customer using the app every single day. Like, oh, they're not using it. They're not sticking to it. They're not adhering to it from a business perspective. And even as a user, a customer, oh, you have to do this every day for it to work. That's all baloney. And what we see in behaviors with users is that they use it at times of need. The use of meditation is greater around the holidays, political change. That's when people are coming to the tool. So why can't we celebrate that? And you don't always have to be doing it every single day, and you can still reap the benefits from that.
What do you see as the minimum effective dose? Because some people would be like, oh my gosh, if I don't have an hour, if I don't have 20 minutes, I can't do it. I'm not going to get the benefits. So from a research standpoint, what is the minimum?
This is the ultimate question, and there is no answer. When I was at Calm, they'd have the daily Calm for 10 minutes, and I was trying to prove how many of these sessions do you need before you're going to see change. The way that you would have to set up a study is a little costly, and nobody's really done it. We don't know what the perfect dose is. It's anywhere between 10 minutes and upwards of an hour. But if we go back to that internal thing, the perfect dose is whatever you can do. And my meditation teacher used to teach me this. Is you need to think of it as a savings account, a bank account. The more you meditate, somebody's withdrawing from your account, the easier it is to handle the withdrawal. You don't go in the negative. And I should say meditate or a mindfulness activity, because journaling, like for me, pulling cards and journaling is very healing. Anyway, any of those things are building up your bank account. So then when your kid comes in your room 10 minutes later and storms in, interrupting you and asking for something that you've said no to 20 times, you don't lose it. You kindly respond that we've already discussed this. Would you like to talk about something else now?
I feel like you've had a lot of meditation teachers.
I have.
You have. What are some of the misconceptions? So at one point, Jen was new to meditation. What's your view of meditation now? Because I think a lot of people have this idea of like sitting on a pillow and lotus, quiet mind, everything still.
Well, we all know you can find mindfulness in everything that you do. When you're doing dishes or folding laundry, if you're aware, because I have a spiritual practice, I do have times that I'm very aware I could be mindful right now. And so I can fold the laundry with mindfulness, paying attention to the way that the clothing feels, the cotton of my husband's shirt versus the cotton of my child's shirt. I'm just super aware of all those things while it's going on. So if you're doing that, all these thoughts about work or whatever else, there's no room for that. It's quiet. My journey actually started when my daughter was born still, and I started meditating because I didn't have any choice. I started yoga, and everyone said, oh, yoga is just the physical entry. You're going to meditate in no time. I was like, yeah, right. And then the next thing you know, I'm meditating. So I was meditating with a teacher in one-to-one for a while. That's when I realized that there was this thing called Calm, and I would use Calm for meditation. And I wanted to do it right. I'm a type A.
Yeah.
I'm a scientist. I wanted to do it right. So that's when I started to be like, ooh, could I get a teacher and like sharpen my practice? And so I did get another teacher. He was in the UK. I found him through Insight Timer. And so then I asked him if he does private meditation. So we started doing private, but the privates would be like 45 minutes of talking about meditation and about the lessons and about life and then we would do like a meditation and he would have me practice.
Yeah. So I feel like so many people are trying to create new behaviors and they're tracking like so many things. If you could tell them to track one metric and to do one thing to change their behavior to get some traction so the habit sticks, like what would those two things be?
Gosh. So if you're going to do the inside work, you'd have to be practicing mindfulness and start to get in touch with where am I? What are the feelings I have inside that I haven't let go, that I'm afraid of? And like, so that's the inside part, right? If you want to do that, that's the one behavior you should do is practice the mindfulness. If you overall just want to be just more healthy, right? Like, you know, in behavior change, in the science of behavior change, goal setting is very important. Setting small goals that then become larger goals. So you're not going to run a marathon tomorrow. You're going to walk 10,000 steps because you want to accomplish and build self-confidence to continue to do that. So that's what the goal setting is for, is every time you reach a goal, you're setting self-confidence. It's called self-efficacy, and then you're more likely to stick to it. So goal setting is very important. The second thing that's very important, especially with women, is social support. And I've talked a lot about this in my interventions, but social support is really about you Because we always think like other people have to support us. And if nobody supports us, then what do we do? And we're like a victim of like, well, nobody's supporting me. So like if you, like in a typical, let's say, family of 4 household, like you have your partner and your kids, right? And you want to have a certain behavior and you don't get the support at home. So I can't do it because I don't have the support. But when I'm talking about support is I'm saying you have to be accountable to get your own support. Mm-hmm. I actually did some work with validating a tool on support as well. Mm-hmm. It's like getting support is, or having support is more about asking for it, being accountable to get the support. Because you can't just sit there and go, okay, I want to be work on my sleep behavior. Who's going to support me? And just sit there and hope that one person walks in and goes, I'd like to support you in your sleeping behavior. It doesn't really work like that. You have to communicate, right? So it's like we would do this in the sessions in Fit Minded. We would write letters to the people that we wanted to support us about how they were going to support us.
Oh, interesting.
And then we would ask them to go home and share those letters. And you would be amazed at how many women were like, oh, that worked.
Yeah.
You know, because like no one's going to die if you don't make dinner. If you go home and you say to your family, I am going to do this at 5 p.m. when I'm off of work, which means I won't be done till 6 p.m., which means we won't eat dinner till 6:45, 7 o'clock. You can help me by doing these things, helping with dinner, waiting patiently and not complaining, like give them the list and then go and do your thing. So asking for what you need. So goal setting, and then asking for support.
Last question for you. What's a question about inner being or your inner knowing that keeps you up at night?
I mean, fear is always a thing, I think, for everybody. I'm always asking the question of, like, what are you afraid of? Each time something happens with my growth of my internal being and, like, being all of who I can be, it's always a release of some type of fear. You know, like if you're letting go of something, you're holding on to it because you're afraid. So it's like every time I let go or every time I see a shift, it's because I've gotten aware of the fear, where I'm in fear and not love.
Well, where can our people stay in touch with you and follow along in what you're doing?
Well, I have a website, jenhubertyphd.com, which actually is going to be fit-minded.com very soon. And but I'm also on LinkedIn as Jen Huberty, and I post there twice a week. Yeah, those are the 2 ways to find me.
Well, thanks so much for sharing all your wisdom and insights. We really appreciate you.
Thank you for having me. It's been fun.
If you like this episode, share it with a friend. For more conversations filled with awe and wonder, be sure to subscribe to the Vitalist podcasts. Till next time.